Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to this video. Like I said in my previous video, we are going to be creating a widget UI or UI widget HUD to display our stats for debugging. So like I showed in the introductory video, basically I want to get some sample stats down for us to be able to view and look at and add to as we are doing this game animation sample project from scratch, especially since, you know, I'm pretty sure the veterans of Unreal Engine don't really need it, but I want to do this more for people that want to understand the game animation sample project, as well as for the newbies that are trying to get into Unreal Engine and want to understand how the game animation sample works, right? So I guess to get started and go off that point, what we are going to do then within our Unreal Engine, so this I have it set up from last time, is let's go back into the third person map just so we can see where we're at. And what I'm going to do here is we are going to create a widget blueprint. So we're going to right click into the content browser and we are going to go to user interface widget blueprint. And here we don't need anything extra, we just need user widget. That'll give us the basic HUD that we need to do our stuff. So now that we click on that and got that, I'm going to call it UI underscore game HUD, just like that. Just to kind of get it started, so that way we got it going. So go ahead and double click and open it up. And once you're inside, we are in the designer view. This is, you know, for all the people that are new to Unreal Engine or don't know much about the widgets. The designer part is where you can actually design your stuff. So you'll see tutorials, you know, where they'll add, you know, progress bar, or Jesus, well, they'll add progress bars into there for you to be able to, you know, gauge your health and stuff like that. Do like other cool stuff, like add sliders for the settings menu if you ever make a main menu, stuff like that. So to get started in this, we are going to search for a canvas panel and drag and drop into our game HUD. So we have our canvas. So as you saw, if you didn't have a canvas panel, you're going to have a progress bar that's the size of a canvas panel. So that's kind of, from my understanding, that's why we want a canvas panel, is that way we can place stuff. So like if I get the progress bar now and place it in here, it's not the size of the canvas. So it actually looks like a small progress bar that we can extend, you know, and decrease the size, whatnot. So, so pretty much start with the canvas panel. And what we're going to do at the moment is we're just going to compile and save and leave it there for the moment, because we are going to be coming back and forth into this a lot. So I'm probably just going to move this over here real quick. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to jump back into the third person character blueprint, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a function called update stats for debugging. You're going to see why. So I'm going to go over here to functions and I'm going to hit the plus button. And like I said, I'm going to call it the update stats for debugging. Boom, just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the third person map. And like I said, you know, in one of my previous videos, we do end up going into animations, because for underneath characters, mannequins, and animations, because I want to go into the ABP Manny animation blueprint to get some actually very useful stats for debugging, right? So we're going to double click that to open it up, and what we're going to grab is these right here. So as you can see, you know, with these stats that are being called in the animation blueprint, is we're getting and setting our character's velocity. So for those that may have trouble understanding what velocity is, it is just a vector node with 3 values to it, like your X, Y, and your Z values. But if you were to look up and try to define velocity, it is basically your speed in a direction. So if I said that I am moving 50 miles per hour westward, that is my velocity, because I have given you my speed, my ground speed on an XY value, and I've given you the direction that I'm going in. So that is basically what velocity is. So But with velocity by itself in this context, it is just a 3-point value system where we get our X, Y, and Z values. So that's why in here, when we have it set, because we're trying to get our velocity from the movement component, set it in here, but to get our ground speed, that is why we call the vector length XY, because what we are trying to do here is only grab the length of the XY values. So basically what this does, if we go back into the third person character and go to the character movement, you will see that we have, where is the walk? Right here. The walking max walk speed is 500 centimeters per second as an Unreal Engine. So what this does is it returns the XY values and basically puts it into one value or one variable that then turns into our ground speed, which is where, you know, I'll give you an example, right? If we were to drag off here and do a print string node and grab this value and put it in here, and we hit compile, save, you can already see that we're doing a print value constantly because we were doing the animation update, which is basically like the event tick for the animation blueprint. So if we hit play, as you can see, as soon as we start moving, you can see our value has shifted to 500, and that is because that is our velocity. So or our ground speed, our vector length of the XY for velocity. So, you know, it doesn't give you the direction that we're moving in, but all you can say really for the character at the moment, because of our rotation and stuff like that, is that we are basically moving forward at 500 centimeters per second. So that's basically how you want to translate it there. So now if we go out, and I am just going to remove this because we don't need it here, but, you know, we're going to look at the others real quick before we transition them into our character blueprint. So here in the second node is set should move to true only if ground speed is above a small threshold and if there is currently acceleration applied. So basically, you know, in the animation blueprint, you want to be idle. You don't want to immediately go into like a walk run at like a very small speed, basically, because then it just looks stupid or it doesn't look accurate, or, you know, it just doesn't look right. So what we're doing here is we're grabbing the current acceleration and we're making sure it does not equal 0. So it has to be above 0 for us to have a true value for that's set to true, saying that we do have acceleration. And then our ground speed that we're getting from here has to be above 3, to where it's like, hey, we are actually speeding up, we're going faster, and we do have acceleration. So if both of these are true, then we are moving, or we should be moving, so then it would play the moving animations. And then off of that, we have the is falling node. So we're basically, is falling is kind of self-explanatory. It's just, are you in the air? Are you falling? It's kind of misleading because when you think is falling, you don't think of jumping as well. But this basically is just any movement in the Z axis of our character. So the Z is like our up and down of the character. It's just if we have any like velocity, any movement in the Z axis, we are considered falling. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab from the second node onward and copying that. And I'm not going to get the movement component because this is being set here. It's just basically getting character movement from our third person blueprint and just setting it to something different. So we're just going to call character movement straight within our character blueprint. So once you got that, we're going to go ahead here and hit copy and go back into our third person game character. And we are going to paste it in here. And what I'm also going to do, we're going to do a couple other things. I'm going to add a sequence node here. Basically, it's just a sequence node. It fires off a sequence of events listed within something. It is a very useful node, so that way you're not having like a bunch of these strings everywhere. And also, too, I don't think you can do that anyway with a function. So a sequence node is nice to have because it just immediately gets applied into stuff like this. Yeah, okay, so we also need to do this. So real quick, I'm going to create local variables. Or no, I'm going to create variables of these speeds, and I'm going to put them in a grouping that are basically our stats for debugging, because we do want these variables because we will be calling them publicly in our HUD. So I'm going to go through ahead, and all these set ones, I'm going to turn them into our variables. Okay, and then once you do that, I am also going to go up here and grab the character movement. So just like how they had it in the animation blueprint, we're just going to call character movement straight there and then just put them into where the movement components were in the animation blueprint. So just like that. Awesome. And then we are now going to connect all these into our sequence node. And just to tidy them up a little bit, just, you know, make them look nice. You always like nice things. And boom. Put it there. Alright, perfect. So now we do have that, and we have them as our variables. So now to set variables into groupings, if you are unfamiliar with how to do that, basically you're just going to go over to one of the variables over on the left side. You're going to left click it, and we're right here where it says category. You're just going to click on default. If you do the drop down, it has other stuff like default, camera, and character, because as you can see, we have the camera. I don't know where it's getting character from, but it has the camera grouping right here. But we're going to call it something else like stat debugging, just so we keep these separate, because there's going to be a lot of variables that we are creating, and I want to make sure that they are properly organized for my pleasure and everybody else's pleasure. So now that we got that, we are going to start our basic debugging HUD. So now that we have those variables created, let's go back into our game HUD. And what we're going to do, I don't know if there's a better way of doing this, but in the GASP project that I have, where I've been learning the game animation sample project from scratch, I've been using a bunch of text variables or text nodes within the designer. I don't know if there's a way to do a better system with it, but basically I've just been adding text boxes and renaming them one at a time. So, you know, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this ground speed. I'm going to make another text box. I'm going to leave that alone for a moment because you're going to see what we're going to do. We're going to be binding separate text boxes to functions, so that way we can get proper text outputs. So I'm going to leave that block alone. We're going to add another text box to the canvas, and we're going to call this we'll call it movement state. We're going to call it movement state. And I'm going to put a colon just for niceties, make it look nice. Actually, I'll do the ground speed too. I'll do a colon there, space that, make it look nice. And then I'm going to add another text box, because that's going to be where we bind the movement state variable. And then I'm going to add two more. So here is the second to last one. And we're going to be calling that, let's do movement mode. So, and I'm going to show you where I'm getting these in just a second, but we're just going to call those for the moment, and we're going to grab one more text box and put it there. So now we got our ground speed, we got a text block that'll be used for our function, a movement state that is just a text box, and a text block that's going to be another function, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and move these out of the way. So ground speed, when I was playing around with it, I liked, and here's the values that I have given them to where they look nice to me. So we're going to start at an X position of 20, so it moves it over to the right a little bit, and we're going to keep it at 0. Then for our text block, what we're going to do is it's going to stay on the 0 position because we're trying to keep it here in the corner. I want to keep everything in the corner. And then our X, let's see, we're going to move it 150. Let's keep it 150 for a moment. No, we'll put 200. And then movement state, we're going to put it to 20 because that is our text box stating what we're at, so we're just kind of adding padding. On the Y, let's drop it 30. Yeah, so see how it moves it out of the way now, so because we're going to get them all down in a line. And then for our text block, we're going to make it, let's also make it 200, so it moves it over to the right 200, and then 30 so we can see where we're at. Yeah, we'll fix those up. So, let's see. And then movement mode, we're going to shove it down by another 30, so we're going to do 60, and we're going to move it, pad it over 20, and then our function block, we're going to drop it down 60, and let's move it to 50 just to see. So maybe 300, 300 is too much, 280, let's see. That's perfect. So then let's go back into our second text block function, and let's move that over to 30, 250, 270. Let's see how that looks. Let's do 280. So let's see. So we got 280 here, 280 here, and then our first text block that we're going to be using as a function. Let's move that over to 250, and it looks weird. No, 240. Boom. There we go. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and compile and save just so we don't lose progress. And now this is where we're going to be calling our stats for debugging. So real quick, I'm going to show you where I'm getting these variables from. So I'm going to bring over my game animation sample project so that way you can kind of see. So in mine that I'm currently going through and learning structs and enumerations and stuff like that, you'll see there is a thing called, so maybe not in this, but it was in the game animation sample project where it's an enumeration, and they have several enumerations called movement state, movement mode, rotation mode, and other stuff like that. So basically, like, movement mode is like your method or mode of transporting your character, whether it's in the air or on the ground. And then your movement state, are you idle or are you moving? So that's basically what's going on there. So now that we've seen that, we are going to hop back into our normal project, and here's what we are going to do. So let's go ahead, and we are going to hit the graph button here at the top right corner, and we're going to work on this event construction real quick, because we do have to get our player character and assign them as a reference to get our variables from our character blueprint. So similar to how the animation sample is doing it, where you get owning actor, you cast to the character, you set the character reference, and then you get, this stuff off of them. So similar to how that's working. So if we go back into our HUD, let's go ahead and we're going to, let's do cast to player, or no, let's cast to third person character. So BP third person character. And then our object, I believe we can do get owning actor or get owning player. Yep, get owning player. I believe that's right. What do I have in my thing? Just so I don't mess y'all up, I'm going to check this real quick. I believe I have just that. The UI game mode. And in my graph, no, I have get player character. My apologies, guys. So we're going to delete get owning actor, and we're going to do get player character. Boom, there we go. Just that way we only get the player character. Then we're going to compile and save that, and we're going to come here to this output node, and we're going to promote it to a variable and call it our character reference. Because basically we don't want to call the cast to third person and this every time. We just want to construct our reference here, so that way we can call everything that we need within our functions. So once we do that, we're going to go back into Designer, and these text blocks that I was talking about, let's go ahead and click into the first one. And on the right side in the details panel, you should see this text block where we've been doing ground speed, movement state, etc. And we're going to click bind, and we're going to create binding. You will see this, and this isn't bad. The problem is that the variables that we want aren't in here. So we have to create a binding to create a function for it, and then the variable reference that we created, we can then call it here. So like I was showing you in the third person template where we have our stats for debugging, we made these public so that way these can be called in here into our HUD. So once we drag and drop our character reference in here, we're going to drag off of it, and we are going to do get ground speed. So as you can see from our stat debugging, as you can see right here that we've labeled it under, we have our ground speed. So we're going to grab that, and we're going to drag off this node and put it into the return value text box. And as you can see, what it's doing is it is converting a float value into a readable text. So once we got that, we can go ahead and compile and save. And just to show you what is going on, well, actually before I show you what's going on, we need to then pop back into our third person character blueprint. I know that we're here in the stats debugging, so we're going to go back into the event graph. And what we're going to do, we're going to right click into the space and call event tick. So that way we can then update on every frame or every tick our stats. So we do need to then now work with the begin play and the event tick. So when creating or assigning your game widget or your HUD to your character, what you do have to do is drag off of here, and we will then call the create UI game HUD, create widget, my apologies, create widget. And then we are going to call our UI game HUD here. So that's how you assign the HUD to your player. And then once we got that assigned, we will then drag off the execution pin here and click add to viewport. So that way we see it within our viewport when we play. So what you should see now is if we compile, I have to also make sure to hook up the return value, because we got to return the value here into here so it knows what to add. So once we do that, compile and save. So when we do play, you will see that we have a ground speed of 0 and a text block and another text block, etc. So we're not getting any data into it yet, just because we haven't hooked up our stats for debugging into our event tick. So let's go ahead and close this back out, and we're going to go to our event tick. And what we're going to do is this function that we created, we are going to drag and drop here, and we are going to all that there. So that way every tick, every frame, we are updating our stats. And then what'll happen is once we hit play and we start doing stuff, because this will be updating every tick, our game HUD will be getting the constant update of references from what we've constructed. So because this is constantly updating, in here, it's going to pass that value into here, then convert it to text, and then return that value into that text block. So that is actually what's happening, and that's how you would get an updated debugging system for any character or debugging event that you're doing. Is whatever is being called in our character blueprint, it is always updating in here because the event tick and that value is always being passed into here. So even though this has been constructed once on a begin play, our value is constantly being updated in the event tick here. So when I click play, you're going to see what happened. You'll see, notice how the ground speed, like I was saying, because we made the reference to the character and on every tick we're updating the data, it is now showing that we are running at 500 centimeters per second. So now that we got that, what we're going to do is we are going to go back in Designer, and we're going to do the text blocks here to get our movement mode and our movement state. So for like what we did with the ground speed, we're going to come here to the text, we're going to bind, and we're going to create binding. And what we're going to do is drag in our character reference, drag off here, and we're going to do get should move, because we are in the, I believe, movement mode now. Let me make sure. We're in movement state. So yeah, this is correct. So we have this. So now what's going to happen here is, don't be fooled by thinking you can just click and put that in there, because what's going to end up happening is you're just going to get true false value. What we actually need to do here to make our true false value actually mean something is we need to right click into here and grab a select node. So as you can see, it may look kind of wonky at first, but basically what we do is anything that we want to output these options that we assign, we have to drag into here. So this index is going to get like a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 value, and whatever those values are, it's going to output those true or false or those values from the select node. So, for example, if we had an enumeration and we put it into here, it's going to then go through enum values here in the select and then return those values. But since we passed in a bool, you only see true or false. So, going based off of that, we are going to create 2 local variables. The reason we're keeping it local because there's no reason for it to be public. We're not calling them anywhere else. It's only going to be specifically local to this function. And we're going to switch them both over to text variables, just because we're going to select those text and then throw it into the return node. So this first one is going to be called idle, and right in here, the default value, we're going to just repeat that right there. And then the second one is going to be called moving, and we are also going to type that in here. So basically real quick, we're gonna drag these out. So I hit Control and then click and drag. So what we're going to do is, if this is true, we want to tell ourselves when we're debugging that we are moving. So if it's true, we are going to get the text in this variable saying that we are moving and return it. If we are not, then we are in an idle state. So we are going to grab the idle node and pass that value in there. So we're going to take the return value here and hook it up into there. No conversions because we have text nodes here, so it just makes a simple, 1, 2. And just to show you how this is going to work, we're going to compile and save. So like I said, if we are moving, kind of how we discussed in the event animation sample blueprint, if we have a ground speed of greater than 3 and we do have acceleration, we will be moving. So when we hit play, you will now see that our movement state says idle, and if we start moving, we are moving. So look at that. We have now a ground speed and a moving debugging stat. So now we are going to hop back into the game HUD, and we are going to then work on the movement mode. So this movement mode is going to be our in air or on ground, so we know what's going on. So just like before, we are going to go over here to the details, text, bind, and create binding. And just like how we did in the movement state, we are going to create 2 local variables. We're going to call make sure they're text, and we're going to call the first one on ground, and then repeat it into here, on ground, on ground. And this one is going to be in air. Oop, come on. Boom. And then let's drag these out. And let us grab our character reference, drag that, and then do a get is falling, because that was part of the stat debugging that we brought in. So if I drag off again and do is falling, whoop, you can see right here, stat debugging is falling, get is falling. So we have that, and then drag off here, and we are going to do a select. Oop, no, my apologies. Let's click into the graph and do select here, just so we can get a blank value. So just like in the other function, we are going to drag here into the index so we can set our true and false selections. So if we are in the air, if we are falling, so jumping or falling in general, just any motion in the Z axis, we are going to set true that we are in the air. And if it is true, it's going to return the in-air text that we set in the return value here. And then if we are on the ground and not falling at all, we are not in the air, we're not falling, we're going to call the on ground text. So now if we compile and save that, let's hit play. So now we can see, and look at that, we can see that our on ground, we are moving, we are on ground, our speed is 500. If I jump, it switches to in air. So as you can see, now we have the basic stats for our character that we can look at as we go through this series. So I do greatly apologize that this video has taken roughly about 30 minutes to do. This is probably going to be the only video that I try to do that is this long, but I had to go through the methods of showing you how I do my stats for debugging, like how I showed in the introductory videos. So hopefully this has been very educational for you. I can't wait to see what y'all do with it, and if y'all make videos or make video games of like kind of all the debugging you'll be doing. Very useful to have it on screen when you're testing your characters. So that's pretty much going to be it for this video. In the next video that we're going to be doing, we will then start our process with learning how to set input actions for aiming, strafing, and then after that video, we will be going over how to officially update our orientations to kind of match the strafing and aiming system. So the aiming one is going to be pretty much a multi-parter, just because of the fact that with the aiming, we are going to be looking at things like structure data. We are going to be breaking those down. We're going to be getting all sorts of speeds, creating variables for cam styles, all that other good stuff. So I'm very excited for that video. I think it's going to be really cool. I know later in the series, like I showed you in the introductory video, I've been breaking down traversals, so that's going to be very late in the series as I figure it out, but it is very cool with what I'm doing, so I'm very excited for that. But there's just so much stuff to go over. So but anyway, going back to it, I'm going to stop the video here. Hopefully this has been great, and I cannot wait to see y'all in the next video. So other than that, y'all take care. Bye.